If you're like me and grew up watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, then you might have some conflicting opinions of Netflix's recent adaptation. And I know to a certain degree I'll be thrown on a spike by the diehard fans of the original for saying anything remotely positive, but I don't give a damn. Before I discuss in length the few changes that I did like from the original, I first want to quickly mention the obvious things they got right as a standalone show. Like for example, the set pieces and cinematography. I mean, just look at this! They also did a pretty good job on the costumes, showing a distinct design difference of each region. Hell, even the casting I felt like they got right. And while it was far from perfect, I think the choreography and special effects were solid for the most part. They at least made it watchable in comparison to this dog shit. But the biggest focus in Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender is the characters, and I like how some of the development still maintains the feeling of the original while going about it in a different way, which leads me to some of the changes that I did like about the show. One of them being how Jet and Sai's character arcs are intertwined in Omashu, and strangely enough, they work off each other very well, showing us two drastically different perspectives to a similar situation. One tries to resist the occupation by any means necessary, while the other just wants to simply get by, even if it resorts to helping the enemy to ensure the safety of his family. But in the eyes of someone like Jet, he's nothing more than a traitor. And we do see these perspectives in the original, but they don't bounce off each other like this, as the adaptation does a hell of a job portraying these characters' questionable morality by tying both of them together with the conflict of the episode. Because at the end of the day, these two are not evil men, they're just doing what they think is best for their specific predicament, which we get a lot of insight on, making the audience more invested to see what happens. Because we know that Sai wants to protect his son, and we know that Jet wants to protect the people through his resistance. And sadly, both of these desires are in opposition of each other. And during this, I like how Katara and Sokka are blinded by their admiration for their new friend, to the point where they don't believe in what the other is saying, even though they're both telling the truth, leading them to trust and respect each other more going forward. And another change that I kinda liked was Bumi's character. And the reason why I say kind of is because it's not really an adaptation of him, as he's much more hardened and pessimistic of the world around him. But it fits the tone that the story is going for, so it makes sense to have this difference. I want to start this portion of the video talking about Sokka, which for the most part I actually enjoy this version of the character. I think the actor, directors, and writers did a solid job capturing his mannerisms, sarcasm, and his charismatic charm. I mean, they don't call my boy the Backbender for nothing. But with that being said, I think they critically misused him when it came to his relationship with Suki. Now, as some of you may know, the writers announced before the release of the show that they wanted to move away from Sokka outgrowing his sexist ideals early on in the story. And a lot of people were bitching, shitting, and or crying their eyes out over this, but personally, I didn't really care. As long as they replaced his early character development with something else, I was completely fine with it. And they kind of did that by adding his insecurities about his capabilities of being an adequate warrior and meeting up to his father's expectations, which I really liked. But the problem lies with Suki and Sokka's dialogue exchange. It's bad. In fact, it's really bad. Borderline unwatchable. If I could describe to you their relationship in one word, I would say cringe, or awkward, or antisocial. I mean, any of these words would work. And by the end of the episode when they kiss, it doesn't really feel rewarding, nor does it make sense since they have no chemistry. As opposed to the original where Sokka slowly grew to admire Suki not only as a person, but as a very capable warrior in her own right. And I think a big factor into why some of the development between certain characters, especially our core trio, suffers is because of how much they are trying to cram in just a few episodes. And to the writers' credit, they do a decent job at times condensing down the story. I literally mentioned it earlier with Jet and Sai's characters. But they also at times do a really piss poor job. Like they decided to clump up all these characters during the game's Spirit World journey, so it felt like a clusterfuck. Some of these characters they didn't even have to include. Like for example, Wan Chi-tong. Sorry if I butchered that. Yeah, he's in the first season, and I have no goddamn clue why. Like at this point, you guys are just fucking yourselves over by making it unnecessarily difficult. I really truly believe the live action adaptation would have greatly benefited if it was listed for 10 or 12 episodes rather than 8. This would have allowed the writers to kinda space out the events and add some of the missing hijinks from the original, which in turn could have led to more character development for the trio. Yeah, I don't even know how to start this point, so I'm just gonna say it. I fucking hate Aang. Not only as an adaptation, but simply as a standalone show. Because this character isn't a character. He is just a plot device, someone to simply move the plot along. Seriously, mostly everything he says is either about the events of the past, adding more lore to the world, or something to do with the plot. Besides some really small moments that are few and far between, like with Monkiatsu, there is practically nothing for this character. I honestly can't tell you much about Aang at all, and I don't want to make another comparison to the original since I think Aang just sucks as a standalone character of this show, but just take for an example when Aang arrived at Kyoshi's island. In the adaptation, he immediately tries to contact Avatar Kyoshi, aka he simply pushes the plot along like the plot device he is. But in the original, he rides a giant fucking koi fish. Like, that's so goddamn cool. All the likability of this active, energetic, show-off silly little kid is gone. And I get what they were trying to go for by making it a darker and more gritty reality. And I don't mind the changes they made to Bumi since it fits the world and there's something to him. But when it comes to Aang, there's just nothing there. As an adaptation, it isn't completely bad, but it's not that good either. And this is about what I expected because in my opinion, Avatar: The Last Airbender is not only a masterpiece, but it's one of, if not the greatest children's shows to ever exist. To the point where any age can watch it and enjoy it, which is a super hard feat to achieve. I just think the original is something that's unadaptable without it being obviously worse. But with that being said, I don't think it's a half bad show. On its own, it has a fair share of problems, but I do think there's enough here to give it a watch. Most likely you'll find at least something to enjoy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking, subscribing, and comment below what I should do next. I'll do animes, shows, movies, games, whatever. But again, thank you so much for watching.